The kitchen was silent except for the rhythmic, heavy thud of the rain against the bay window and the low, steady hum of the refrigerator. I was standing at the granite island, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might actually bruise. Gabe was standing directly behind me, so close I could feel the radiant heat from his chest through the thin silk of my blouse. He didn't touch me at first, but his hand was hovering just inches from my waist as he reached for the blueprint spread across the counter. I held my breath, the scent of him, sawdust, cold rain, and something warm like sandalwood, filling my lungs until I felt lightheaded. When his forearm finally brushed against mine, a slow electric shiver raced up my spine, grounding me and unmooring me all at once. I looked down at his hand, calloused and steady, and then up into eyes that seemed to see right through the mask I'd been wearing for a decade. In that moment, the air between us felt thick, almost liquid, charged with a tension that made every other sound in the house fade into a dull, distant murmur. I knew I should move, should say something to break the spell, but my feet felt heavy, anchored to the floor by a sudden, desperate need to stay exactly where I was. Before I go any further into how my life completely unraveled from that moment on, I want to ask for your support. If you've ever felt like you were disappearing in your own life, please like this story, and subscribe to hear more real accounts of people finding and losing themselves in ways they never expected. Your comments and your presence here mean the world to me, and it helps ensure these stories reach the people who might need to hear them most. I am 41 years old, a woman who has spent the better part of 15 years building a life that was supposed to be the dream. My name is Elena, and if you saw me at a PTA meeting or hosting a neighborhood barbecue, you would see a woman who is polished, organized, and deeply content. My husband, David, is a successful architect, a man of precision, schedules, and quiet dedication. We have a home that looks like it belongs in a magazine, 2 beautiful children who are the center of our universe, and a marriage that has slowly, quietly, turned into a series of polite transactions. We talk about the mortgage, the summer camp schedules, and the broken dishwasher. We are a well-oiled machine, but we haven't been us in a long time. The intimacy didn't leave with a bang. It just evaporated, leaving behind a dry, sterile landscape where we moved past each other like polite strangers in a high-end hotel. I had accepted this. I told myself this was just what happened after years of domesticity. I told myself that security was more important than passion, and that I was lucky to have a man who never raised his voice and always remembered to pay the bills on time. Then, the storm hit our town, and a massive oak tree limb came crashing through our roof, forcing us to hire a contractor for major repairs. That was how Gabe entered my world. He was a local artisan who specialized in reclaimed wood, a man who worked with his hands and spoke with a directness that I found both jarring and refreshing. From the first day he arrived at the house, the energy shifted. He didn't just walk into a room, he occupied it. He was younger than me, probably in his early 30s, with a quiet confidence and a way of looking at things. At the wood, at the house, at me, as if he were trying to understand the soul beneath the surface. Our initial interactions were purely functional. I would bring him coffee while he worked in the gutted living room, and we'd discuss the timeline or the choice of finish. But as the weeks turned into months, the conversations began to linger. He would ask me questions that David never did. Not, "What's for dinner?" but "What did you want to be before you became a mother?" Or, "Do you ever feel like this house is too big for the people inside it?" He listened with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. When I spoke, he didn't check his phone or look over my shoulder. He stayed fixed on me, his head slightly tilted, waiting for me to finish as if my words were the only thing that mattered in that moment. The physical tension was a slow, creeping vine. It started with accidental touches, a hand brushing mine when I handed him a mug, his shoulder bumping into mine as we inspected the new flooring. Each contact felt like a jolt of electricity to a heart that had been in a deep freeze for years. I started dressing more carefully for his arrivals. I found myself lingering in the doorway of the rooms he was working in, inventing reasons to be near him. I told myself I was just being a good hostess. I told myself I was just bored. But deep down, in the places I didn't want to look, I knew I was starving, and Gabe was the first person in years who seemed to see the hunger in my eyes. The day in the kitchen, with the rain pouring down outside, was the moment the pretense finally shattered. David was away on a business trip, and the kids were at my mother's for the weekend. The house was cavernous and quiet, the only sound being the rain and the low thrum of the radio Gabe had playing in the living room. He had come into the kitchen to show me the final plans for the custom cabinetry, and the proximity was more than I could handle. When he brushed my arm, I didn't move away. I couldn't. "Elena," he said softly, his voice a low vibration that seemed to settle deep in my chest. He turned fully toward me, his hand finally coming to rest on my waist. It wasn't an aggressive move, it was a question. "I shouldn't be doing this," I whispered, though I made no move to pull back. I could feel the heat of his palm through my clothes, a steady, grounding pressure. "I know," he replied, his eyes searching mine. "But you're shaking." He was right. I was trembling, a fine internal vibration that I couldn't suppress. He reached up, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw with a tenderness that made my eyes sting. He didn't kiss me then. He just held my face, his forehead resting against mine, and we stood there for what felt like hours. Two people caught in a vacuum of our own making. For the first time in a decade, I felt like a person again. Not a wife, not a mother, not a manager of a household, but a woman who was alive, desired, and present. The guilt was there, of course, a cold, heavy weight at the back of my mind. I thought of David, of our life, of the promise I'd made, but that guilt was competing with a sudden, violent realization. I had been living half a life. I had been settling for a comfortable silence because I was afraid of the noise. In Gabe's arms, the noise was beautiful and terrifying. In the weeks that followed, the line wasn't just blurred, it was erased. We never spoke of the future. We never talked about what this meant for my marriage or his life. We existed in the between spaces, the hours while the kids were at school, the stolen moments when the house was empty. It was an emotional landscape of whispers and shared glances, of hands held in the dark and the agonizing, beautiful tension of things left unsaid. He would leave small notes for me, hidden in the places only I would find them, in the pocket of my gardening apron, or tucked into the book I was reading. They weren't love letters, they were observations. "You look peaceful when you're thinking. I like the way you laugh when you think no one is watching." But secrets have a way of poisoning the ground they're buried in. I became a master of compartmentalization. I would sit across from David at dinner, listening to him talk about his firm's new project, and I would feel like a hollow shell. I would kiss him goodnight, and the touch of his lips felt like lead compared to the memory of Gabe's breath against my skin. I began to resent the very security I had once cherished. Every kind gesture from David, bringing me a sweater when it was cold, making sure the car had gas, felt like a betrayal of the truth I was hiding. I was living two lives, and the strain was starting to show. I was losing weight. My sleep was fractured by vivid, restless dreams, and I jumped at every sound of the door opening. The consequence came not as an explosion, but as a slow, agonizing crumble. My oldest daughter, who has always been too perceptive for her own good, started asking me why I looked so sad all the time. David noticed my distance and tried to fix it with more dates, more gifts, more of the same sterile gestures that had failed us before. He didn't suspect an affair. He thought I was depressed or going through a midlife crisis. His kindness was almost worse than anger would have been. It made me feel like a monster. The resolution came on a Tuesday morning, a day as ordinary as any other. Gabe was finishing the last of the work in the living room. The project was over. There were no more excuses for him to be at the house. He stood in the foyer, his tool bag over his shoulder, looking at the beautiful, restored space he was leaving behind. "It's done," he said, his voice neutral, though his eyes were heavy with everything we weren't saying. "I know," I replied, my arms wrapped tightly around my chest as if I were trying to hold myself together. He walked over to me, and for a moment I thought he might ask me to come with him. I thought he might tell me he couldn't live without me. But Gabe was a man who understood the nature of materials. He knew that some things could be repaired, and some things had to be built from scratch. He knew that I wasn't ready to burn my world down, and he wasn't the kind of man to do it for me. "You're a good person, Elena," he said, his voice thick with a sudden raw emotion. "Don't let this house swallow you whole." He leaned in, his lips grazing my temple one last time, and then he was gone. I watched his truck pull out of the driveway, and I stood in the foyer of my beautiful, perfect, silent home and I cried. I cried for the woman I had been, for the woman I had discovered with Gabe, and for the impossible choice that lay ahead of me. I didn't leave David. Not that day, and not for a long time after. But I couldn't go back to the way things were. The silence was gone, replaced by a restless, searching energy. We went to counseling. We had the hard, ugly conversations we should have had 10 years ago. I had to learn how to be seen by my husband again, and he had to learn how to look. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There are days when I still feel the ghost of Gabe's hand on my waist, and days when the guilt of what I felt and what I almost did is a bitter taste in my mouth. But I am no longer a ghost. I am a woman who is present in her own life, even the messy, painful parts. I often wonder how many of us are living in these perfect houses, hiding a hunger that we're afraid to name. If you've ever found yourself at a crossroads like this, or if you felt that spark of life in a place you didn't expect, I'd love to hear your story. Please share your thoughts in the comments or just let me know if this resonated with you. Your experiences help us all feel a little less alone in the quiet. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe and follow for more real-life reflections. We're all just trying to find our way back to ourselves. Would you like me to expand on any specific part of this story? Or perhaps explore the perspective of the husband during the period of repair? I'm still navigating what it means to be truly seen in my life, and I suspect some of you are too. If my experience resonated with you today, please let me know your thoughts. I read every single one, and if you'd like to hear more from this journey, I'd be honored if you would like and subscribe. It's a comfort to have you here in the quiet with me. Thank you for listening.